Hey guys, welcome to the high ground. My name is Fabio and today I'll show you how to rappel. As many of you might know, I'm an alpinist. I have rappelled for thousands, if not tens of thousands of meters, built hundreds of rappels and actually rappelled in various conditions on sunny rock as well as on ice, snowstorms and during the nighttime. And I will make sure that you have a system in place that you can use anytime and anywhere on any occasion. Today we will look at intentional rappelling. So when you actually brought the gear to rappel down, what the optimal setup would be. We will also have a video that I will publish next week where I show you all the various types and forms of emergency or improvised rappels. As you can see, I've put on my harness and I brought you the first rappelling device I'd like to talk to you about. And it's a full automatic rappelling device. This is a GriGri. Now, how the GriGri works as a full automatic rappelling device, you put the rope into the GriGri, and as soon as you weight the GriGri, it will block the rope and you won't slide down. Only if you pull this lever, the GriGri gives the rope free, and then you're sliding down the rope, you're rappelling. There are several other full automatic rappelling devices, specialized rappelling devices on the market. So this is a climbing device. It's generally made for belaying people while standing on the ground. It works very well for rappelling. I don't like single-use rappelling devices because they are single-use, right? So the less gear you have to carry, the better it is. So I prefer having tools that are suitable for different tasks and not only for one. But the GriGri, again, a typical representation of a full auto rappelling device. It's very useful if you would do work, for example, outside of your house, or if you do any work on a cliff where you want to rappel down and then you want to have your hands free to work on it. I generally don't back the GriGri up, so I'm fine with just the GriGri during rappelling. What I do though is if I'm actually hanging at the GriGri and I'm working, I put a knot in the rope below the GriGri just to make sure that if I catch the lever accidentally, that I don't get lowered down. One of the big disadvantages in my book with the GriGri is that you can only use it on a single rope. So it only has space for one rope to go through it. We will look at this a little bit later when we discuss different rappel station setups. The second type of rappelling devices I'd like to show you are brake assists, semi-automatic rappelling devices like this tube. Another example for such devices are the classic figure 8 or specialized rappelling devices that are also semi-automatic like the Piranha from Petzl. I will only show you the usage of a tube because this is the most versatile tool you can have on your belt when it comes to moving through alpine terrain, moving through rocky terrain, rappelling down, climbing up, hauling loads. That tube can do all that and much more. So I would always recommend to go with a tube, and then you should be on the good side. Now this is the tube. You can see mine is already a little bit used. It has 2 slots for ropes, and in here are teeth that are meant to increase the braking strength. You have to make sure that those teeth are not worn down too much. You have that loop in the back that is more used if you want to use it as a progress capture device. And you have the little band that is made from wire. That's basically just made so that the tube can't run away from the carabiner that is in the rope. One important thing to mention is that these devices don't hold on to the rope by themselves. You have to actually hold the rope but they multiply the strength you can exert with your hand by holding the rope so that it gets much easier to slide down the rope in a controlled manner. Now I've set up a rope. I said we will discuss this in a minute. And now let's say I just want to rappel down this rope. I have my tube, I have a carabiner. I just put the rope into the tube, put the carabiner through it, tie anything to my loop, close it up, and I would be ready to go to rappel down. Now, this is the most basic variant. I use it all the time if I just have to rappel down a few meters or something like that, if I'm moving very swiftly, but it has some issues. The main issue is that if I go unconscious, for example due to rockfall, then my hand will open up, I will let go of the rope, and the rope will just slide through and I will fall to my death. That's obviously not good, so what can we do against that? The easiest way to avoid that the rope will just run through the device if I get unconscious is to put a prusik on the rope and fix the prusik to my harness. You can fix the prusik either to your belay loop or to your leg loop. Remember, the prusik doesn't have to hold my full body weight, it just has to replace the force I exert with my hand when I'm holding onto the rope. This is why I can easily put it on my leg loop without impairing the integrity of my harness. So, and with this setup, even if I would go unconscious, totally hands off, the prusik will hold onto the rope and the tube will make sure that the strength of the prusik is enough for me to not further slide down the rope. This setup has one issue though. The issue with this setup is the following thing. Now, when I stand upright, I have a good separation between the tube and the prusik. It's a few centimeters, 2 inches. But if I would go unconscious or if I would lift up my legs just because I'm pushing myself off the cliff, off the rocks, off the wall, then it is possible that the prusik would actually wander up to the tube like this. And then the prusik will hold on to the rope no longer because the tube is pushing it down. Remember, if you push on this side, the prusik will always wander. You have to pull here. So the tube is pushing the prusik down. And at the same time, the prusik is basically lifting the rope over the teeth that are in that region of the tube. And so cancel the additional force multiplier of braking for the tube. That means if I'm up here, I can more or less easily just pull the rope through as soon as the prusik goes up to the tube. That's of course not good because they both cancel out each other if I go unconscious. So we have to do something else with our setup. One way to mitigate this issue is to extend the tube away from your harness. For this, you just need a sling. This is 120 centimeters. Just give it a knot, an overhand knot, roughly in the middle, and then fix that sling to your belay loop. Like this. Make sure that everything is nice and tidy around here. We want to have clean knots, like this, so that they're easy to open. Perfect. Make sure that the stitching is not in the way. Every sling has a stitching, so it's not in this knot, or up here. And then we can go ahead and put our tube through this and have it extended away from our harness. And the Prusik again is tied to our leg loop or to our main belay loop. With this setup, the possibility of the Prusik sliding up to the tube is almost zero. So, as you might have noticed, I have a lot of slack left over sling here. I did that for a purpose, because when I later show you how to actually tie yourself and get into the upside position, you will need something to fix yourself to the rock. So you can already put a locking carabiner in here, put the hitch on it, and you're good for now. So I'll fix this. So this is your setup for rappelling. You can rappel anything with this setup. It's a very secure setup, so you don't have to worry about getting knocked unconscious. If you find that you don't have enough friction on the rope, you can put a second carabiner in here. Also, if you would have, for example, something that you want to transport and that is too heavy to carry it on your back, you can also just put a second carabiner in here and then tie the load to the two carabiners. So you have a lot of possibilities and it's a very secure system. Now, after we have set up our harness in the correct way, let's have a look at how to set up the belay station. What I've set up here is just a single rope rappel. What I did is I fixed the rappel with a clove hitch to my first point. So we always want to have redundancy. That means the clove hitch here is not enough, but I made an additional figure 8 note, and with that I fixed the rope to the second point. So in case this point will break, nothing happens because we are fixed to this point, and in case this point would break, then we would still be attached to the second point. An additional benefit of this setup is that you will have a lot of load on this knot. So if it would be a figure 8, the figure 8 would of course be tightened very hard because there is so much weight if a lot of people rappel down it. And I mean, the same thing happens to this hitch, but it has the advantage that you can just open the carabiner and you don't have to pull on the rope or something. You can just slide it out there and it opens itself up automatically. If you're not sure how to tie the Prusik or the figure 8 or any of these hitches, make sure to check out the other videos in my rope craft playlist. I will link it in the description below. There I go in great detail into how to tie those knots and what they're used for. Looking at this single rappel setup, it clearly has one issue. So after I rappel down, I have to leave the rope where it is because there is no way that I can open up those two knots from down below. An alternative to this is the so-called double rope rappel. You can do a double rope rappel by either just taking the rope you have and pulling it through something and then rappel down on both strands of the rope. This is again the point why the tube, with its capability of having two ropes in it, is more useful than the full automatic rappel devices that can only take one rope. So you can go like this, but of course you will just cut in half the length that you can actually rappel down, because if you have a 60-meter rope, you could at the maximum rappel 30 meters. The other alternative is that you just climb with two ropes. For climbing purposes, this has many advantages that are not necessarily part of this video, but especially on harder climbs, it's always better to have two ropes. So you can take those two ropes just put an overhand knot into them, tie them up nicely, and then you can, let's go with the blue one, and have a setup like this. One word on this knot. Over here in Europe, we all use the overhand knot to tie together two ropes. As long as they have somewhat similar diameters, that is not an issue at all. Make sure to have a 30 to 40 centimeters of rope hanging out here so that it has the possibility to close it up itself. It's a very nice knot because if you pull on the red rope, anything is coming down, you can retrieve the rope, and if there would be some kind of obstacle, this knot will not pinch into it, but will just turn itself around and go over it. So this is one of the main advantages of this knot over the other knots that are used to combine ropes. Okay, and since this is the most technical setup, we will continue with this one. Now, in terms of the setup, I said we always want to have a backup. So we need to back this fixed point up with something. Of course, an obvious solution would be to just have the rope running through both of them, but this is not necessarily a good solution because you will have enormous twists in your rope, so better don't do that. So what I always bring when I'm out in the mountains in a little bit wilder routes where I don't have rappel stations that are already built with a chain between two rings or something like that, I bring a piece of cordage. And this is not paracord. This is actual climbing cordage and has the necessary strength. I will just tie them together, tie the cordage through both of them, tie the cordage together, right, the two ends, and then just leave the cordage where it is, sacrifice a little bit of it for the additional safety of having a backup on my rappel. What you also have to keep in mind is that you, of course, usually don't abseil on or rappel on proper carabiners. If it's a well-maintained rappel station, you will have two metal rings that are connected with a chain. If it is not so well maintained, you might just have a metal ring and a little bit of cordage that is connected to another bolt. But if you build something like this yourself, because you're out in the wild, you might even only have pitons like that. So they are hammered into the rock, and they can easily hold a person abseiling on them, rappelling on them. But they as well, if you are going to loop the rope through them, make sure there are no sharp edges, especially with older ones that are already in place, and also try to back them up with cordage. Okay, so much for the setup of our rappel station. Again, what I tend to do is that I always set up my rappel station in the same way, and for me this is the way to go. One important thing that I'd like to make you aware of, I always tie a knot into the end of my rappelling ropes, just because I want to make sure that I can't in any circumstance rappel off the end of the rope and again fall to my death. A lot of people died in that way, so if you want to see my preferred stopper knot for the end of a rope, check out my figure 8 video. Right at the end I'll show this knot there as a bonus. And yeah, I want to reiterate, please tie a knot to the end of your rope. Even if you think the rope will reach the ground, especially if you're not sure, if you can't see it for sure, then tie a knot in the end of your rope, especially if you have to do several rappels on a big mountain face. Now we made sure that we have a solid system on our harness. We made sure that our rappel position is solid and has a backup. Now we need a system that joins those two things in a reliable, repeatable, and robust way. So the first thing I do when even before I have set up this station, let's assume there is no rope in there yet. I just have prepared the rope and I'm walking towards the rappel station, right? It is already in order, so it is backed up. Then the first thing I will do is I will secure myself to the rappel station, because now I don't have to worry about falling down the cliff, etc. The next thing is I will, of course, put the rope into the rappel station like this. Make sure that everything is closed. If necessary, I will now back up those 2 points, but generally they should already be backed up. As I said, if you have to actually hammer in pitons, you will need to hammer in the pitons and then connect them. But that's not very usual within the normal climbing realm. So I have done all this. I'm secured. The next thing I do is I tie a prusik around both ropes. And why I tie the prusik first is, if I have a prusik here, you have to imagine that I threw down the rope. That means that on both ends there are 3 kilograms, 6 pounds of rope dangling. And when I try to get this rope into my tube, it's really hard if I constantly have weight pulling on them. So if I pull up those ropes, I get slack in here and the weight of the rope gets transferred onto my prusik, and I have just enough room and space to work up here. Now I can easily push this one into my tube. And as you can see, I don't take the tube out because I don't want to lose it. I block it with my finger and then I thread the carabiner through everything. Here it is. And now we are closed. Theoretically, we would be good to rappel now, but we always check our system. That means I get as close up here as possible. And this is the point where the sling is already, there is slack in the sling, and I'm already hanging on my rappel device. But if something would happen, for example, the carabiner would fail, or if I made any mistake with putting the rope into it, I would still be secured to the main point. Now, after I checked everything, I will tighten it with my prusik. I will take off my sling. And one little trick I generally use, in this case, I have to pull on the red rope. The red rope is on my right side. If you rappel down in the night and you have to uncoil the rope because it got stuck somewhere or something like that, you will forget which color you have to pull. First thing is, I will shout over to my partner, if there is any, hey, red pulls. So we have to pull on the red side, but I will also make myself a reminder by clipping this one from the right side, because it's the pulling side, into the little ring at the end of my tube. And now I'm good to go and can just rappel down. And this is how you rappel down. Thank you for being here. I appreciate your time watching the video. If you liked it, give us a thumbs up, click the follow button, and I'll see you next time.